Hello, Odyssey families. Welcome back. So let's see. This is going to be a video about get it ready strategies for families. This is actually going to be focused on Zoom. I'll get to the next slide. We'll sort of explain it. Of course, it's not working now. There we go. So what are we working on today? Today, the target students are going to be those of resistance to joining Zoom at all. So we might have some students we have a bunch of students that actually are participating, every Zoom session or close to it. But there's also a bunch that aren't into the distance learning, the Zoom model. And so, or it might just be for a minute or two. So we're going to start with those guys and girls. And then we're going to work on other ones later. So I said, like, next week on here, I'll have a video about strategies for to extend time. So if your student is already joining for a minute or two, how we can extend that time and maybe increase their response rate. So if their teacher's asking them to respond a certain way, whether it's vocals or doing gestures, that they can do that. I know the students or the teachers are working a lot on changing things up, getting new materials. I know the boom cards, a lot of the teachers are using now. There's a lot of really great strategies that we're using, introducing to hopefully improve, increase the motivation for our students to actually participate. But we're going to also talk about these strategies. And just to sort of, and I always say this on almost every video, remember that these strategies, these are some strategies. They're not specific to your student. So this is kind of a framework. This is what we could do, but I think for each student, it's going to be different. Just every student is an individual, and we need to make sure we're honoring those skills, deficits, behaviors, the household structure, everything we need to anticipate for that and plan for that. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, any of these strategies and implementing them, please go ahead and contact your teacher and we can collaborate on a plan for your student, a specific individualized plan. So let's see. So hopefully I'm not blocking it with my little screen there, but setting up the transition to Zoom. That's sort of, I think, if we're talking about foundation, this is the big one. We need to prepare the student ahead of time. I don't know, I'm not in your home. I don't know how everything goes. I can say from experience as a parent, trying to get that transition, especially because at least with some of the other students around, they're starting their day earlier. Our students, a lot of the Zoom sessions are at 10 or 11 o'clock, so that we can get more participation. And that might mean your student wakes up, if you're have an early riser, they might be up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they might have had a quarter of their day already. And then you need to transition to a Zoom class at 11 o'clock. It's not as clean as, if it's 8 o'clock or 8:30 where they get up and you kind of make a routine, you have that downtime in between. If they're waking up early and then they have their Zoom class later. I know some sessions are also in the afternoons too, so that's even a little bit more dicey. But these are the sort of the basics that I know we've talked about in other videos. If you're interested in more detail, there's a lot more detail in other videos, but there's visual schedules, those first then boards, timers, all of those things could be beneficial for this kind of transition as well. I know we're talking about that for just transitions anyway, but this transition, because in general, this is technically school time, so we really need them focused. So they shouldn't have a lot of extraneous stuff going on. We'll talk about sort of when we're okay with some of that, but we need to really make sure that we're preparing them. And the sentence I put at the bottom is generally earlier and more warnings are going to be better than no warnings and less of them. So and I know some students you might not want to. I know when we talk about changes and schedule changes, you're going to know your student. So sometimes you want to wait until maybe half an hour. You don't want to say the night before because that's too much ramp up time. But you definitely want to give them more warning than less. And you need to give them a warning. You need to give them, and this is where the visual schedule, the first then board, the timer, where those are going to be important to let the student know it is coming. It's going to be up to you guys. And really when we start talking and the teacher and we all collaborate on it, we're going to want to make sure that we prepare the student for them, not for just anyone. We wouldn't want to, it's not a one size fits all. Let me make sure I don't have anything there. Oh, that's another transition. I kind of mentioned it, but if, make sure that your student's fed, make sure that they're awake. I know I've had a few students that fall asleep on calls, and And make sure that if we know that the Zoom call's at 10 and they're sleeping until 10:30 every day, we might want to start waking them up earlier, so we're not just waking them up and sticking them on a Zoom call. That's just a recipe for disaster for all of us. So let's just anticipate those sorts of transitions and account for those before we really expect it. Let's look at the next one. Set up the environment. This is sort of a general good rule to follow. Just as with academic, like seated academic, the TV, the music, the video games, the toys, anything that can be distracting, it needs to be out of sight. We're going to talk about sort of some conditions where we're going to allow some of those things to be around a little bit later in a future slide. But really, in general, we want to set up the situation and set up the environment so the student's going to focus on that, on the screen, on the Zoom call, not on the other stuff. And then also be sure to have any materials ready and close by. So if we're using a visual schedule, the first then, the timers, all that stuff, you want to, if you had a little bin, put all that stuff in a bin and make sure that you have that available so you're not searching around in the moment when things kind of go awry. And if you're going to provide reinforcement, have that close by. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. I want to just looking down my notes. But we want to provide reinforcement through this whole process every time. So make sure you have that available as well. Let's see. So the social narrative. Actually, I'm going to switch over. I'm going to switch that over right now. I need to share. Where is it? There it is. So I wrote this really basic one. Use some pictures from Odyssey, so you might see some familiar places. This is a very, very basic social story, social narrative. Again, if you're interested in social narratives, they're on another video, long video. This is a very basic one. We'll just go over it really, really quick, just so you can get the idea of it. So seeing my teachers and friends on Zoom. So I usually see my teacher and friends at school. And there's a picture from the playground and the quad where you read books, played on the playground, and walked around the quad. Right now we have to stay home. I can still see my teacher and my friends from school on my laptop or tablet or whatever you guys are using. Phone sometimes. When Zoom class starts, my teacher and some of my friends will be on screen. So again, when we were talking about individualizing, if we can get a picture from your class with your teacher and a couple of the peers on there, just for that familiarity. I just found one with pleasant looking people on the screen, non-threatening folks. I need to sit so I can see my teacher and they can see me. I should have a quiet body and quiet hands. That might be personalized for, I know different classrooms have different language that they use for those reminders. You might need to add things. In talking about this, you're going to want to modify this. I'll get to that in the slide. I know that's in there, but then my teacher will have an activity to show me. This is Miss Jessica from 1A. I just pulled this from one of her videos, but it might look a little bit different. I know, again, with the boom cards, teachers are using different materials as well, but we just want to have a display for the students to know, oh, this is what it's going to look like. Teacher's going to be up there. Oh, sometimes it will be loud. I can ask for help to make it quiet. That's something that we'll talk about too later. Depending on your student, it might be something a little bit different. I can wave to my teacher, say hello, or ask questions. Again, this is a really quick visual that we could use. There might be, if you have a core board, if you have your tablet, tablet communication device, whatever you might have, make sure we have that available too. But this is just a reminder to the students of what's going to be happening. Oh, I can also ask to be all done for a break. And then at the end, when the class is over, I can wave or say bye to my teacher and my friends. That's it. So let me go back to so the social narrative. We want to present it daily for a few days ahead of time. You don't want to do it 20 minutes before the first time you're getting on the call or the first time you're trying it after a delay or a break. You want to do it ahead of time. And also, this is going to look very different depending on your students' skills and preferences. I kind of should have switched this around, but you're going to want to modify and work with your teacher to especially get pictures of them. But modify the story to match your student, their classroom, and other supports. you're going to want to have, if they have a communication device, you probably want a picture of that communication device on that picture of the requests of the all done and break and all that stuff. If they're not in Miss Jessica's class, you're going to want a picture of your teacher. If you have, and also I had something on here too, is if you have a student that's has strong reading skills, you might want to use more text. If you have a student who isn't reading, probably less text, more pictures. You're really going to want to, you know, really want to make it specific to them, so it's actually meaningful to them. Using that one, again, sort of like this whole presentation, it's a framework, but it's a good frame to be able to put the things that your student's going to need on that frame. Let's make sure. Oh, and also another thing that I had was, if your student hates to be read to, social stories probably aren't the thing, social narratives. So we'll have to use some other things. Just had to keep that in there because there are some students that really dislike being read to. Sensory considerations. This is a kind of a big one. And actually I've been on a bunch of classes recently, and some of them are loud. Some students are loud. Some households are loud. And so we've got to make sure, what I recommended here was like just to start with a very low volume so you could barely hear them. I was in a video Zoom class today, and it wasn't too loud, but there were some conversations like, you know, if there's multiple kids in the household with other students, it's just going to get loud. And so we've got to make sure we anticipate that. Some of our students that wear headphones, it might be helpful that they have those headphones on, allow it. And we'll sort of work from there. If it's really, and we'll talk about this, can be something, I'm mentioning it here, but it can be a thread throughout this entire thing, is ask your teacher to start with a one-on-one session or a smaller group with preferred peers. So it starts really positive, really, is what we're looking at. If having 5 or 6 students on screen is too much with the teacher, or just one really loud student and the teacher, maybe you want to dial it back and start with a one-on-one, quick and get it in, get it to be a positive experience, and especially for our sensory sensitive kiddos, students, adults, young adults. Is the Zoom screen too much visually? That's one, depending on what device you're on. If it's I know some people have done it on the phone, laptop, tablet. You might want to change the view, experiment with that. You know, you can log in outside of the class. I guess you can't. There's ways you can do it, but kind of experiment with it, see what the screens look like. Sometimes maybe making the teacher the main screen. That's what usually you can pin someone, depends on what device you're on. Pin the speaker screen so the teacher is up there, and then mute everyone else or hide everyone else if it's too much visually. I also recommend maybe dimming the screen if it's too much, I mean, if it's too bright. The other thing is to make the Zoom window smaller. This would probably work for the laptop. I don't know how it would work for the tablet. Phone is already pretty small, but if you're on a laptop or a Chromebook, I know that a lot of districts have the Chromebooks, if you can make it smaller so it's totally taking a quarter of the screen, that might be more appropriate or more acceptable or tolerable for your student than having the full screen where it's just, you know, someone's face right up there. Let's see, I want to make sure I don't miss, oh no. Okay, so that's the sensory one. Okay, so now we're start slow. So this is sort of a, I'm going to call it kind of a, I think on the next screen is desensitization. But we're going to start slow. We're not going to expect students to stay on. I know that I'm feeling the same way. And when my daughter started distance learning, I wasn't sure how long she had to stay on, and trying to make sure she was on there and staying on there. But we have to start slow. So we're not going to expect if the class session, some of our class sessions are 45 minutes, an hour, we're not going to expect that. We're not going to expect, I said, not even 30 minutes, it might not even be 5 minutes. It might be 10 seconds, legitimately 10 seconds. You get on screen, you wave hi or bye, and you're out, you're done. That is something we can work with. We can shape that into longer periods of time. But if we can't even get the student on screen at all, then we're gonna have to start with that. We might have to start with that 5 seconds, might be it. So even if, and that actually might be too much, the wave or buy. Even getting them on screen might be the first step. Again, this is all going to be personalized to your student and kind of where their behavior is at, where their compliance is at, where their tolerance is at, all of those things. And each time you remember, you want to provide reinforcement, especially when they get on screen. If they do anything on screen, you want to socially praise them. Access to preferred items. I believe it's right in here. This is the one I was talking about. We don't use edible reinforcement at school. It's sort of a campus-wide rule. But you're at home. You're kind of running the show right now. So if you need to dangle that carrot, that food item, first say hi to your teacher, and then you can have something. It could be gummies, or it could be whatever's going to work. Goldfish crackers, chips, hot dogs, corn dogs, whatever. We have a lot of interesting diets on campus, so it could be something specific to your student. But you want to make sure that you're providing that after they're successful. And even if it's that 5-10 seconds of being successful on screen, you're going to still want to give that praise and give that reinforcement. And right now, it's at the bottom, it's preparation and flexibility are the keys right now. We have to make it a positive experience at first. We're not going to be able to run until we walk. So let's start with walking. Let's really start with standing, which standing is going to be the first thing. And that's just getting on screen. Then we can work on all that other stuff. Slow desensitization. So when a student is resistant to joining Zoom session, or even approaching the tablet, we will need your help to prepare them. So what I already talked about with some of the preparing the environment, making sure you have the visuals, the social narratives, we need your help to provide that support to your student to get on the calls. Each of these steps might take weeks, and that seems crazy to think we're going to go from 5 seconds to 20 minutes. But if we can get the ball rolling, we can get that behavior momentum and reinforce them and build up their tolerance, we will get there. It might not be a half an hour, it might not be 45 minutes, but definitely we can get to longer and longer periods if we're using all the strategies that we have and all the supports we have at our disposal. Make sure. Oh, so let's see. So possibles first step. Again, this is a framework. Especially for those students that don't want to look at the screen at all, you might want to display the Zoom screen far, far away from the student. The examples I gave was like in the hallway outside of their room, across the room. So they can still do their own thing, but it's almost like you're going to be in the Zoom class. Allow it to sort of be, the furniture, be the wallpaper. It's not right in their face. It's there though, it's present. You also may need to start with that no audio or just video, or vice versa, depending on your student. They might really like seeing the video without the audio at first. Totally fine. And then you slowly, if that's the case, then you slowly increase the audio. But you've got to sort of figure out what's going to work for your student. So at this point, again, no demands. It's just there. It's kind of there. Again, it's furniture. You don't force things. And again, provide reinforcement each time. Next step is parallel access. So if your student is sitting on the couch or sitting in their room, wherever they might be, at the table, and they're on their tablet, or they're hanging out, doing whatever their preferred activity, looking at books, playing with toys, whatever it is, you might sit near them, but you're not going to sit right next to them. So again, we're not going to get it right in their face. We want it to be sort of parallel. They can see the screen, but they can see it from an angle. Again, we would still use the same strategies. It might be muted, it might be a smaller screen, it might be that the teacher is pinned, all of those things. Again, and I think I had this on my notes, is we're going to want to combine all of these things with those visual schedules, the first then, the social narratives, the timers. And I mentioned the timer here too. It's slow, and it might seem like forever, but you've got to walk before you run. So we've got to get that ball rolling, and forcing the issue and pushing too hard is just going to get more resistance. And we know what happens is we're going to have behaviors when we do that. So we really want to make sure we're doing it slowly, building up the tolerance, and making it safe and sort of positive experience for our students. Again, slowly increase the video or audio exposure. Maybe you're sitting, you might be in the dining room and they're in the living room. You might be 10 feet away. You might be, but they can see the screen. You're going to start slowly, and this might be each session, you might move a foot closer, not 5 feet closer. If you're 10 feet away, you might be 9 feet away the next time. The next day, you might be 7 feet, you might be 6 feet, but you're not forcing it. You're trying to build up a positive experience. Again, we might just let them watch from far away. They might not even be on screen. We kind of, and I don't think any of our teachers have already talked about this with all the teachers. We just want to get them on screen eventually. But if they're going to watch from an angle, if they're going to watch just off screen, so they're over here, you can't see my hand, but over here where you can't see them, that's totally fine. We're totally accepting that. Again, provide reinforcement each time. Then once we get the student, so that might take weeks. I know I said that in 2 slides ago, but that last step might take weeks. Once we get the student on screen consistently for a couple of sessions, maybe it's for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, not the full session, but just a few, that's when we might start putting demands in. Again, we're going to want to talk to the teacher about this. They can talk to me about it, and we can really collaborate on sort of what's going to be an appropriate next step. But that's when we look at maybe a single action. Maybe wave to the teacher, point to all done on their icon on their core board, and say bye, and they're all done. That's actually a bunch of steps, but you might pick one of those. You might just say all done or bye. What was a student yesterday said? I think he said bye. Okay, bye. And we honored it because I'd much rather him say bye than grab the screen, hit the screen, hit you, engage in any other behaviors that would be dangerous or potentially harmful to materials or themselves or you or other family members as well. So that might be just that first action, one action. And that's what I said at the bottom. So, and again, same thing, provide reinforcement each time. When it's done, you want to provide that reinforcement. And sort of, I'm kind of skipping ahead, but because I'm not going to make 50 slides for this, but as we keep going, we're going to want to get 1 step, maybe 2 steps. Maybe allow the student to be 10 feet away and watching the screen for a while, because there's a lot of interactive stuff they can do that they don't need to be right up on the screen, and allow them to participate in that, and allow that progression. So I give just a few examples. If you're using, I don't think I actually mentioned this earlier, but excuse me, a star chart, a token chart, start with one star missing, get that last start, they're done. Using that timer, start with 10, 20, 30 seconds, minute. When you start seeing that progression, you can increase the timer. Encourage communication, as I said on the previous slide. If they say done, if they say all done, or something else, they request it with their tablet device or core board, a sign, SignWorks, anything. Honor it and provide that reinforcement. And the reinforcement might be they're just done, which is totally fine too. And then this is the last slide. Remember, this is just a framework. What strategies are available? There are plenty more out there. So if you see something online, I know there's so many things out there, and everyone's dealing with this for their children. You know, there's the isolated places that are back in school already, but pretty much around here, we're mostly, you know, other than a couple districts, we're mostly still going to be doing this for a while. So there's a lot of families and a lot of folks, and I know, you know, Facebook groups and different support groups that have different ideas. If you have something that you've seen, or if a friend or a colleague or anyone mentions, you know, bring it to the teacher and say, hey, can we try this? It could be something based off of this, or it could be something completely different. But please just contact us. So, and again, I always sort of make this, but contact your teacher and let us know what makes sense to you and what you're able to do. That's why this is a framework. If you look at this and you're thinking there's no way, okay, I can see why. But might be there one thing that you say, I can do that part. I can do the social narrative thing. Can you guys print it out, send it to me? Can you put the pictures of your teachers and send it to me? I'll do that. And we can try and put a plan together that is going to be most appropriate for your student, individualized student. So I think that's about it. Again, I'm probably going to make a video for next week about maybe more engagement in Zoom. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It's YouTube. Let us know, contact your teacher. They're the sort of first line of defense. And I think that's it. I guess that's all. All right, until next time. Thanks.